Hello, everyone. I'm Rory McGuire. I'm a professor and extension specialist at Virginia Tech, and I am for the soil because the soil is our future. We don't make any more of it. If you eat, you rely on soil.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii. My co-host, Mary Sketch Bryant and Eric Benfelt will join us in just a few moments. But first thing I want to do is remind everyone that we're asking everyone who listens to this podcast to take a pledge to help improve soil health. How hard is that? I mean, whether it be in your container garden, on your apartment balcony, or on your 400-acre corn and grain operation in Southside Virginia, whether it be in your apple orchard or your industrial hemp farm, wherever you do, whatever you do, you can improve the soil all around you. And we're asking everyone to take a pledge to do that. You can do that by visiting our website at forthesoil.org. That is the digit 4, thesoil.org, and there you'll see on the menu bar right across the top of the page, take the pledge to improve soil health in your own world. We appreciate you doing that. Now let's get to this podcast. Welcome once again to For the Soil, a Conversation, a podcast that we've been doing for several months. We've had some really intriguing guests on the podcast over the past several weeks, and today we're going to have another intriguing guest back for you, Michael Carter Jr. with the Carter Farms in Orange County, Virginia. Also joining us, we have Mary Sketch Bryant with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition and Eric Benfelt with Virginia Cooperative Extension Community Viability. Eric, would you do us the honor of reintroducing our special guest today?
Yes, Jeff, we're pleased to have Michael Carter Jr. of Carter Farms and also Virginia State Small Farm Outreach Program. And Michael wears a number of different hats and serves on different boards, and really glad to have him back to talk about soil health and agriculture. And this is a deeper conversation. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I would encourage our listeners to go back and listen to the first episode with Michael Carter Jr. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about passing on your farm to the next generation. I believe you're now in the 6th or 7th generation of Carter Farms. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm the 5th generation. My sons are the 6th generation.
And we also talked about agriculture, which I found fascinating. And Mary, I know you had some questions that you still had for Michael, so let's just continue that conversation.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, Michael, on the last episode, we spoke some about your commitment to education outreach through agriculture, your nonprofit, as well as working with your sons and continuing to pass down the generational knowledge. But another hat you wear that we mentioned is working with the Small Farm Outreach Program at Virginia State University, and would love to hear a little bit about your work with the Small Farm Outreach Program and how that intersects with care for the land, passing down generational knowledge, and soil health.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm working as the Virginia State University Small Farm Outreach Program, and we're a side of extension that focuses more so on smaller farmers. Ideally, the small farm in Virginia. There's approximately 42,500 small farms in Virginia, and we're kind of the extension arm or the outreach arm that kind of service those farmers. And we work, I work around the state, talking to farmers, listening to their needs, their concerns, as well as trying to help them out where we can, providing markets for them and guidance in terms of technical assistance on a number of different areas. There are challenges within that. We are, not equally funded as other cooperative extension aspects of agriculture, and that does affect our service, especially when you're talking about dealing with 42,000 or so different potential clients or customers that you're working with. And that funding is part and parcel of some of the disadvantages and some of the realities in agriculture, where, on almost every state, there seems to be a larger cooperative extension and then a cooperative extension that was supposed to be initially started to support Black farmers, and then it became social disadvantaged farmers, and it became small farmers. And unfortunately, that still persists in 2022, where the services for small farmers and for social disadvantaged farmers, which include pretty much what we would term minority farmers, has less services and less financing for those institutions as the larger institutions do. And and we suffer from that accordingly. At the turn of the century of 1900, Virginia had the largest amount of Black farmers in the country, at almost 25,000 Black farmers. By 1925, Virginia had 52,000 Black farmers, still the largest in the country at that time. You talk about next, almost 100 years later, Virginia has approximately 1,333 Black farmers. So we've seen a 98% decline in the number of farmers in the state, number of Black farmers in the state. And that has a tremendous impact upon how we view agriculture as a community, how we value the land that we are actually on, and also in wealth. Wealth inequality is definitely perpetrated by a lack of land or a land base. And part of the educational aspect that I do is try to increase the number of Black farmers that we actually have in the state of Virginia. I would like to get back up to around 5,000, which would be 1% of what our peak, as opposed to 0.05% of our peak that we're at presently.
And Michael, in our last episode, you also mentioned about issues around erosion. And I wonder if you had any aha moments related to soil health, whether it was on your family farm in Orange County or during your time in Ghana, West Africa.
Oh, I have so many aha moments. My life is full of aha moments. So yeah, working on a farm kind of allows you to have those type of aha moments and making connections, especially in terms of how we approach agriculture at Carter Farms and with agriculture, where I do a lot of barefoot farming, and I feel like that's allows me to connect a little differently with the soil and kind of hear and make the connections between the soil and the health of man. And most of us may know or may not know that man and woman are constituted by the same mineral composition as the earth. So ideally, we're just a little earth in terms of how we're made up. We're just saying, most of us know that we're about 70 to 75% water, which is about the same as the earth. And then we're made up of the iron, the calcium, the gold, the palladium, the platinum, and the molybdenum, and the magnesium that makes up the soil, and almost the exact same percentage. And it's our job to really cultivate more minerals in soil than we should be cultivating plants. So at Carter Farms, we really focus on cultivating microorganisms. We focus on cultivating and growing microorganisms to ensure that we have better plant health, which means if you have better plant health, ideally you can have better animal health and better ultimately human health. And those are just some of the things that we look at, and kind of our aha moments. And I see, one of the aha moments as well is that we're an endangered species as African American farmers. And with most endangered species, what you need to do to preserve them is protect the environment. And that's what I've not seen as much in Virginia agriculture or U.S. agriculture, is seeing the African American as being an endangered species in terms of farming. And I've seen other institutions kind of rally around their farmers who become endangered species, i.e. like a dairy farmer, where there are efforts being made to increase the number of dairy farmers, or at least preserve their history and preserve what it is that's happening. And I think dairy farmers and African American farmers probably had the similar type of scenarios and histories, at least in terms of their destruction and decline because of market forces and environmental factors. It doesn't make them as viable in the market. And and there's a necessary need to bring more attention to these realities of how we got here, and ultimately how to move forward so they don't become an endangered species or become extinct.
We're talking today with Michael Carter Jr. And Michael, once again, I want to commend you on your website. For our listeners who would like to learn more about your operation, it's thecarterfarms.com. It's located in Orange County. Once again, thecarterfarms.com. And Michael, there's a very interesting page at your website. It's about agriculture, and we discussed that in the previous episode. But there's a subtopic in the agriculture that just fascinates me, and I really want to pick your brain about this topic. You call it spirituality and the soil. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear your thoughts on spirituality and the soil.
And I think, thank you, Jeff. That's a great question, and I think a topic that gets overlooked quite a bit. If you recall, if you're in any type of spirituality, there's usually a connection directly with the land. And if you're into, more so the modern religions of today, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, you find there's a lot of parables with the soil. And if you're a Christian, you'll see, I mean, the first job that the Creator ever provides and only provides is that of a gardener or farmer. Adam was a gardener placed in the Garden of Eden. He was not a banker. He wasn't a Messiah. He wasn't a president, a lawyer. He was a farmer. That was the only God-created job that was ever mandated in the Bible. This is what you want to do. And then from there, you saw the growth of shepherds, with Abraham and his understanding of how to maintain livestock, and Jacob and his blessing came from his understanding of being a shepherd. And David, who was a shepherd. All these men that we revere and look at had a direct connection with agriculture, and men and women. And it was their understanding of the land and ultimately of the nature of the land that gave them their powers and their wisdom. And I think that's what we've kind of, for me, that's the land is kind of like my church. And I observe and I watch and I look at it to gain wisdom, because the Creator created the land. And I often look at it as the trees and everything else that was created before us are considered to be our big brothers or our big sisters. And we are the little brother, to be learning from our bigger brothers and sisters about how to guide ourselves in this environment in a way that's not of dominion, but of harmony and peace.
And Michael, I know you are a mentor for so many, but would be interested who a few of your mentors in particularly as relates to what you're doing for soil health and care for the land on your farm and what you're passing down to others.
That's a great question. I think some of my mentors, definitely, especially that are living, would be like Bernard Turner in Louisa County, Cliff Slade in Surrey County. And then probably, I really appreciated Dr. Lane Ingham. I've never met her, but I was always watching her YouTube videos in Ghana, just learning about the basics of soil and the soil food web. And then there's others like George Washington Carver, who I don't think gets enough credit for being the founding father of organic agriculture and soil health. We understand that he did a lot with the peanut, but he did a lot with the peanut to restore the soil. So he used the peanut as a tool for reviving and restoring soils that were depleted by continuous cotton growth, 2 African crops. And because of his African background and knowledge, he was able to put 2 and 2 together, that you have an African crop. This is what we would have done in Africa had we depleted the soil as we did. And then creating a value-added products with the peanuts, which is why he created 300 and some different uses of the peanut, which was all value-added to provide farmers with the idea of what to do with this new goober, as they refer to it, that the farmers can now utilize to earn a living, support themselves, as well as restore the land and the soil. Dr. Carver doesn't get enough credit for his conservation and soil health practices, I don't think, in my opinion, based upon how his story is told and shared. So those are some of my inspirations. I'm sure there were many, many others. My father being one, my uncles, my godfather, I remember my godfather's father, Dr. Gibson, some of my professors at North Carolina A&T, like Dr. Granger. There's been a lot of individuals who kind of planted seeds along the way that's kind of stuck with me all of my days.
And Michael, I know you and I have exchanged different book recommendations at different times. If you'd have books that you would recommend, I think most recently we were exchanging some books on the issue and topic of trauma, thinking about generational trauma and collective trauma. But
that's a good question as well. I'm a huge fan of Stephen Buhner, and The Lost Language of Plants is one of my favorites, my all-time favorites. Plants in the Imaginal Realm is another one of his books, probably his 4th or 5th book on plants, which is another great one. Teeming with Nutrients and Teeming with Microbes are some of my favorites. Deep Nutrition. Oh, goodness. I'm trying to think some more. We talk about, healing. We talk about, My Grandmother's Hands, which is a great one from Resma Minicum, and his new book that just came out, which I just got in yesterday, The Quaking of America, is another great one. There's a lot of great books. You'd have to email me. I'm a bibliophile, so I have about maybe 3,000 books, I'm sure, in my library. And I can't name them all. I would like to, but
You mentioned YouTube. Do you have any favorite YouTube channels concerning specifically on soil health or agriculture that you follow?
I don't, unfortunately. Outside of Lane Ingram and the Soil Food Web, I used to do a lot of history on YouTube, not as much soil health.
Well, on your website, I was also sort of the foresight of, I think, your grandmother, Maddie Shirley Carter.
My great grandmother.
acquiring the land after 1947. And then also I was wanting more details about dinner and a race.
Okay. My great grandmother was living at another part of our land, which is also on the track about 3 miles away with my great grandfather. I wasn't living at the land that we call Carter Farms now. And in the 1930s or 1929, roughly, her siblings had a wedding or some type of event in which they mortgaged or leveraged land to pay for the event and use it as collateral. And, in 1929, October that year, I believe, was the pretty much the Great Depression kind of set in with the Wall Street for debacles that happened. So the land ultimately was, I won't say put into foreclosure, but the processes of repaying the debt was going to have to be taken care of. So it was taken to court. The family was taken to court, and my grandmother stepped in, and apparently the county clerk knew my grandmother and explained to her that the land was going to be sold, but they gave her the first right of refusal to buy the land back. So she made an agreement with them and got the land, was able to acquire the land, but she was able to acquire the land not until started paying for the land in 1942. Right after D-Day, my grandfather and his 2 older brothers were summoned into the war, World War II. But before they left, my grandmother made a arrangement with them where they would send back all of their pay, their $29 a month pay for fighting in the war, back home to secure the land. So my grandfathers and his brothers, along with his sisters who were working as domestic servants in Orange County, all the money they got in, they sent to my great grandmother, and until they got $1,250, in which that was a fee that was needed to keep the land back in the family, or keep the land in the family. So 1947, that fee was finally paid off, and we've been maintaining the land ever since. Presently, the land is a portion of it is air property and another portion divided amongst family. In terms of dinner and a race, we do dinners with individuals that talk about specifically this race. Usually a culturally unique dinner in terms of the food we share. Usually a vegan soul food of some sort that we prepare or have catered. And then we have a real face-to-face, heart-to-heart talk about race. Nothing is off the table. There's no stupid questions. There's no, ignorant questions. There's no, questions that are insensitive. It's like, whatever questions you have, whatever, stereotypes you are thinking about, whatever it is, feel free to ask those questions. I got pretty thick skin. I'm not too worried about whatever you say, because I generally can, give you a better historical understanding of what it is that you're thinking. So we utilize those things to, help people get more comfortable talking about race, and ultimately to be able to, increase their knowledge about race and racial matters. Race is a very sensitive topic in America and in Virginia, and a lot of us kind of go about it without actually understanding some of the historical realities that have created some of the perceptions that we have about race.
All right. Unfortunately, our time is up in this episode. Michael, you have a very interesting occupation and operation, and I would like to remind our listeners once again of your website, thecarterfarms.com, and you have events and workshops. You have a very interesting gallery of images there concerning your operation, and I commend you for everything that you do, and I know that our listeners will want to go to that website once again, thecarterfarms.com. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
For the Soil, a Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you have a specific question about soil health, contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of Jackson F. Smith. All rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.